When you got a guy like Cejudo coming off a massive layoff, haven't seen him in forever, against the current champion Aljamain Sterling, I've noticed that your numbers have fluctuated here. What did you open those numbers at, and where have you seen the money come in the last weeks and months?
Yeah, no doubt. What an interesting fight, man. I'm so glad Cejudo decided to come back, and he had so much room left, you know what I mean, as far as his abilities and his championship caliber that he's got. I did open the line a little bit higher than most. It was minus 130 plus 110 at the time for Cejudo, and we got some sharp action immediately that came in and pounced on Sterling. Like you said, man, I mean, there's a lot of question marks surrounding Cejudo right now, and a lot of it is because of the time off. We're just not 100% sure that he's going to be back in form once, like he was a few years back.
And he does have a 7-inch reach disadvantage. We don't expect this necessarily to be a fight that stays on the feet. We're expecting both these guys eventually to get down to the mat and see what plays out there. So you mentioned that layoff, 36-33 for Aljo here. And I even saw it here at Circa get up to $1.20 and back down today to $1.15, where we see the current price. Is it almost like once the public feels like they get a good number on Aljo, you're seeing them pounce on it?
Yeah, especially, I mean, he's been performing amazing, really. Even in the rematch with Jan, I mean, the game plan that he had going into that fight, you got to respect him. I mean, a lot of people were definitely counting him out, and he performed over expectation. So he is definitely deserving of holding that strap and is one of the best bantamweights in the world for sure. So the public is going to, anytime you see a plus number on somebody of that caliber, it's hard not to kind of pounce that way, right? But again, Cejudo, the way they match up against each other, I think Cejudo is actually the better mixed martial artist. So I think you're going to see a case of a lot of sharps and a lot of early action coming in on Sterling, but a lot of people are going to wait and pounce. The bigger action is going to come in on Cejudo, I think, by fight day.
Let's talk a little bit about the total here. And right now, you can understand with these guys in a 5-round main event, and we know they're pedigree, and once they get down to the ground, and certainly Aljo was on the ground and pound and wrestling, he has Cejudo, you mentioned it here, so well respected in the betting market for the different ways he might be able to get you out if it gets down to the ground. You can understand why now it's minus $1.60 here, juiced to the over 4.5. Do you see finishing potential here for these guys? And I wonder if these numbers you think are going to change before we get to Saturday night.
Yeah, I was just glancing at the down bet screen, looking at the market prices that are out there right now. And yeah, I do think that most people are going to like the over in this spot, but I do think there's finishing potential, honestly. I mean, Cejudo, if he's able to stuff the takedowns and not let Sterling backpack him, then I think Sterling in round possibly 4 and 5 is going to be exhausted. We know that Cejudo's striking is on point. He's got finishing ability for sure. So I think there's a possible finish for Cejudo late, or if Sterling's able to get on Cejudo's back, I mean, his submission skill is so good that we can see him possibly sinking that rear naked choke and end it as well. So I think it depends on whose fighting style works best in this matchup, but we could definitely see it go under. For me, I would not lay the chalk on the over. I think more people are wanting to go that way because they think this is just going to be an all-out war, but I can see a finish for sure going under.
The numbers have been moving a little bit here in the last couple of weeks. What do you make of the King's return? Henry Cejudo, 3 years of layoff to try to take the strap now from Aljo.
Look, I'm done doubting Aljamain Sterling. I've done it more than once in that fight with Piotr Jan, especially the second one, made it so that I'll probably never doubt him again. Because look, he looked phenomenal on the feet. The development in his game on the feet under Ray Longo is clearly a big part of his game. And I just don't know that somebody is going to step in to the cage off of the layoff that Henry Cejudo has been on and take it to him. So I'm going to go with the champ here. I think this is a razor close fight, super exciting. And also, I just think we'll know enough about Cejudo probably 5 minutes in to know how this one's going to end.
I'm so confused by this main event. When you got a guy like Henry Cejudo coming off a 3-year layoff against the current champ and Aljamain Sterling. Aljo tweeted at me a couple weeks ago about I'm going to backpack him. I'm like, man, that's my name's Paul. That's between y'all. What are the numbers showing you when you got a guy like Cejudo now at 135 off the layoff against the current king of the division?
Yeah, there's some good give and take here. And again, we have a situation where I've backed both guys, and so it hurts a little bit to be forced to pick against one of them. But the numbers back up what Aljamain Sterling actually said. He spends a disproportionate amount of time on the mat backpacking people, and that is a number I actually look at. I don't normally put it out, in the data, but it is something that sticks out, and that's very different from Cejudo. Cejudo is a top control guy. He works from usually full guard, puts people down, and then works from there, ground and pound. But Sterling is much more about transitions, scrambles, and submit, and just the control time that he gets. going around and making everything difficult to deal with. And that's just one of those guys. Cejudo is just more of a traditional wrestler. So that's what we're going to get. And when you look at the stand-up, there's a similar stylistic contrast. While they might look similar in terms of accuracy or pace, very big size discrepancy.
Yes.
Cejudo made his name at flyweight, and now he's fighting a rangier bantamweight. And just stylistically very different. Sterling is very much a high volume, long range guy. Cejudo is more of a counter striker, and he's trying to lull you in and get that inside boxing. And so that's what makes this confusing. You're not alone. This is a tough one. The market still can't figure it out. Clearly Sterling opens as a favorite, and then it just tanks from there. And now we've got to pick them. Maybe even Cejudo's going to close as the favorite. So throw all that out the window. You've also got a layoff to deal with, and Cejudo now being on the wrong side of 35. The numbers still like Sterling, and I think that he has been undervalued multiple times in the past. He's come through for me. I am going to take a small stab on him. I love it if I'm getting even money or plus money, but it's going to be a tricky matchup to watch.
It really is. And Reed, I'm glad I'm not the only one confused. And I look at the total here, and obviously you can understand here we're in a bantamweight weight class, lighter weight class, 135. So we understand why at 4.5 it is juiced right now at minus $1.60. Are you seeing finishing potential? And what really is just almost counterintuitive to me is Cejudo is actually the shorter number on the KO, TKO, or DQ prop at plus 350. Aljo's got a 7-inch reach advantage. And yeah, we think of him as a backpacker and somebody that's going to wrestle first. But to me, if he gets you down and hurts you, he could finish you on the ground with ground and pound. Is there finishing potential that the numbers are showing?
There is, but I agree with the way those lines are coming out because Cejudo is the bigger knockout threat. He has 5 knockdowns. Sterling has 0, and Sterling has been dropped 4 times. If anybody's going to get dropped on their feet, it's probably Sterling. And so that does support Cejudo as a long shot for a knockout. But Sterling has been in there against dangerous strikers. He's survived. He knows how to stay out of trouble. Aside from one fluky flying knee that he took, he has survived a lot of those situations where he's been in trouble. And so that's what does give me a little bit more faith in leveraging that reach advantage. On the ground, the finishing potential does go to Sterling. He's going to be the one who's flipping around in positions and putting Cejudo in tricky spots, like maybe setting up a submission. But generally speaking, this definitely takes a while to develop, at least 2-3 rounds. And that I sometimes take a more conservative approach on the totals because you never know what's going to happen in round 4 or 5. Someone's cut, someone's gassed, a finish could happen. But I like to be more conservative. I don't see it ending in the first 2 or 3. So I might go like a 3.5 over. What
do you make of the main event? And is this one that you think does eventually hit the cards?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I mean, what is Henry Cejudo going to look like 3 years after, he decided to kind of unceremoniously retire? I mean, credit where credit's due. The guy has an impressive career. His bounce back after Demetrius Johnson knocked him off to claim the flyweight championship and then, go up and win the bantamweight title and do it against, impressive guys with the wins over Dillashaw at flyweight and then obviously Marlon Moraes and Dominic Cruz. Not the same Dominic Cruz, but certainly an impressive victory over Dominic Cruz. But he's been out of the game for 3 years. And, Aljamain Sterling is such an interesting cat because, look, he was decisively losing that fight to Peter Yan before the illegal DQ. Then he comes back, looks brilliant against Yan, but how good is Yan? Because Yan, since that fight, look, the Sanhagen fight, the Sean O'Malley fight, most recently what we've seen, and then Sterling's most recent performance, don't want to poo-poo it, but like DJ Dillashaw was injured. And he was, and the shoulder it came out well documented. So here's what I'll say. I think the athleticism from Sterling should not be ignored. He's a very difficult guy to prepare for. He's long, he's lengthy, he's awkward. And I love his camp. Ray Longo, Matt Serra, get guys ready. And I love the fact, too, that he's Matt Freveau, I think, also is out of that camp. So training alongside, he's earlier on in the card, I think. But who's the benefit to Aljamain Sterling? If I'm picking somebody today, it's Sterling because he's the dog. But quite frankly, I could change my mind. It's such an interesting matchup come fight night and side with Cejudo because it's hard to pick against him.